Welcome to episode 68 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors. In this week's show, we'll have all the news from a thrilling weekend of racing in Boston.
And with barely time to catch our breath, we'll jet across the Atlantic for a preview of the TCS London Marathon, one of the greatest ever professional fields, gets set to race around the British capital. And as a part of that, we'll also speak to the man responsible for assembling that field, as we're joined by the head of elite athletes at London Marathon events, Spencer Barden, to give us some insight to what goes on behind the scenes.
And finally, we hear from our listeners who were in Boston and find out how they got on in Finish Line Forecast. All this and more on Marathon Talk.
Now, Deena, of course, you were in Boston. More about the Boston results. We're recording this, of course, after Boston has finished and just before London begins. London and Boston aside, how's your running been this last week?
My running's been great. It's that spring weather, Martin. I know it wreaks havoc on your allergies this season, but it is great to finally get outside and feel the sun on your shoulders as you're putting in the miles. So it's just so much easier with these lighter days to get out and enjoy the weather. I do feel a tug because I like to be up with the sun, and if I can beat the sun to bed, that's one of my favorite competitions, to get into bed early. But there's a meteor shower going on right now, so I have this draw to stay up late to watch the meteor showers in the sky. I think you'll have the privilege of doing that in your part of the world also. Do you like to stargaze?
Yeah, but it's probably a little bit different where I am, because one of the reasons I'm very envious of where you are is because I bet you've got beautiful dark skies at night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I guess I do when I go down to the beach because you're looking out to sea. But there's still a lot of artificial, light.
Yeah.
Coming off a relatively large conurbation across Bournemouth and Christchurch and Poole, which is where I live. Whereas I expect for you in the mountains, dark skies are a common thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be out at night. It's so dark. You can't see your hand in front of your face. And even when we built our track facility here more than 10 years ago, we wanted to put lights around the track so that we could have evening events or just have people being able to exercise in the winter months under the safety of lights. And we were not allowed to do it because we didn't want to make the stargazers angry.
Wow, yeah, of course. So, light pollution and in natural environments is a really significant thing, isn't it? Once you start putting up those big lights, Deena, even though you can run, you get to miss your meteor showers. Have you done any specific sessions?
Nothing specific except hills. I love, hills make me hungry and make me feel so strong. So I really like when I start to feel a little fitter, I love to just start charging hills and feeling like my heart beating in my throat. Do you like running hills? You have enough available near. You don't like hills that burn?
I don't. No, I'm not very good at running hills. I don't like them. However, I did go for a run with none other than Tony's Trials at the weekend. Tony's Trials used to do a segment on Marathon Talk, and Tony happened to be in my area on the south coast, so he called me up and said, should we go for a run together? We did, and we reminisced about old Marathon Talk episodes, and we enjoyed a couple of hours of running and a nice cup of coffee. And at one point, Tony looked at me and he said, it's very flat round here, isn't it? And I was like, this is about the hilliest route I can take you on. And it's very flat. Tony lives in the Peak District in the UK, so he's used to a few more inclines. So what a treat for me to go running with him.
Yeah, isn't it the best way to catch up with friends is to share some miles together? And so we'll talk a little bit about how weekend after weekend we're sharing miles with thousands of people. So shall we move on to Boston?
Right, on to Boston Marathon. It was the 129th edition of the incredible Boston Marathon presented by Bank of America at the weekend. And what a race we saw. Before we dig into detail, Deena, you were there. What was your role?
It was such a thrilling week. I mean, race weekend always is, but it seems like the weekends get longer, right? A weekend used to be Saturday, Sunday, considered Saturday,
Well, it was
Sunday,
a holiday
right?
weekend, right?
Right. But now it's like for Boston, it starts Wednesday and it goes through Marathon Monday on Patriots Day. So it was just an action-packed extended weekend of maybe 7 different shakeout runs that I went on.
You didn't.
I think people need one day, 3 in a row. I think as a industry or maybe brands specifically need to think of how we can engage the runners without taking them on another run before their big run.
Yes.
There has to be something like a little more relaxing, like a matinee, running movie, or one of the things I engaged in there was a game show. It was sounds like Epperty. Without wanting to say the word, but it was a game show, and so it was like closing your eyes. And Laura Green, who's a comedian, runner, influencer, was the host of the game show, and she blindfolded us and put food in our mouth, and we had to describe
what it was. What did you get? What was?
It was so disgusting. It was so disgusting. She put spinach in my mouth, and I immediately just spit it out.
What,
and
like cooked spinach, where it's all gloopy and green, or fresh spinach?
No,
like raw?
it was fresh spinach, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting like pasta or something runner related, and so I had to describe it to the other 2 contestants for them to guess without saying the word spinach. So I said, it's something a rabbit would eat. And then and then the next thing she put in my mouth. Granted, the next thing she put in my mouth was a sideways unpeeled banana. And I said it's a waxy finger because I didn't know what else to say. I detest bananas. I think they're absolutely disgusting. Probably one of the few runners that don't like bananas. Does any other runners out there not like bananas? I just feel like it's a staple, bananas and bagels and pasta in a runner's diet. But that was also disgusting. The other contestants got whipped cream, marshmallows. Yeah. Like, what made her think that I wanted spinach and bananas?
You're Deena Kester, like it's time to give you something less enjoyable. But it's a really good point about what we do in the days building up to marathon running. I've seen those shakeout runs happen a lot, and then it's fun, right? What do people want? We're sandwiched at the moment between Boston and London. People just want relaxation, a little bit of fun. Going for a run is great, but let's keep it light and fun. And I think I'd like a tiny little tour, with walking and running and coffee and talking and having a laughing and things like that would be great. Did you have anything else official other than those things? Did you get to see the races?
I did not get to see the races. I was traveling home, back to a little bit of family crisis here, but traveling home while the races. So like a lot of running fans out there, I was getting updates the second my plane landed in Los Angeles. So they unfolded so excitingly. But another highlight I had of the weekend was someone who was running the race, and that is the CEO of ASICS Global, Hirota-san, who asked me to take him on a shakeout run one morning. So at 6 a.m., as the sun was coming up over Boston Common and toward the finish line, I was able to go on a run with the CEO of ASICS Japan. It was such an exciting time. And he ran really fast. He ran like 4:05 or something like that.
Probably because he ran with you.
Yeah.
All down to your last minute tips, Deena.
Right. So I was just really excited for him. He walks the walk, right, to be able to encourage people to move their bodies and their minds and express their physical and mental fitness, and he's doing it himself. So that was another really big highlight of the week. And unique to Boston, before we get on to some of the thrilling results of that race, unique to Boston is everything's kind of centered around the finish line area. So it's Boylston Street that the race finishes on. And parallel to Boylston Street is this really ritzy street called Newberry Street, where they have a lot of high-end shops like Tiffany and Company, Yves Saint Laurent. It's a beautiful street, tree-lined, flower boxes in the windows of the townhomes. And there's so many pop-up stores that happen there. So all the big brands, it's Brooks and Adidas and Nike and Asics and Tracksmith and New Balance. They all have these shops that just pop up on this street. So you just walk down this street and tuck into a shop and see the latest merchandise and get free swag. And it's where all the group runs start from. So it was really fun that everything just felt like it was in a centralized location and was open to everyone, runners and families that were touring the city with them. So I really love Boston for that unique experience that it offers. Cities
are really becoming, it's like for one weekend a year, we're going to become the marathon capital of the world.
Yes.
And then, you see everything taking place and they become this huge festival of running. There were some pretty good races too. John Korir, who is in fact Wesley Korir's brother. Wesley won Boston back in 2012. John won in Chicago just back in the autumn. And he went and did it again, back-to-back wins. He ran 2:04.45 to take the men's race, broke away from the pack at 30K and never really looked back. It's really been so fun to see John Korir's career kind of flourish. I was able to witness and even call the race when he won the Los Angeles Marathon in 2024. Then he enters Chicago and wins there, and now Boston Marathon champion. He really did follow in his brother's footsteps, but he's making a name for himself right now. This is his time, and it was just such an exciting race with a mile to go for anyone that has run the Boston Marathon. That famous sit-go sign sits at a mile to go near Fenway Park, and it just kind of lures you from the distance. It reminds me of London Marathon's Big Ben, right? You just see it for a while and it kind of pulls you in, draws you closer to the finish line. So that sit-go sign with a mile to go, John Korir had already put a minute on the second place finisher. So it was pretty much a shoo-in unless a disaster struck. It was pretty much his race to win there. So it was a really decisive win on an extraordinarily difficult course on a picture-perfect day. But you say, he had a great run. He actually had a bit of a nightmare in the first 25 metres because he fell over. And can you believe it? He took a tumble right at the beginning of the race. Sometimes when you watch kids' races, everybody starts too quickly and they all bowl all over the floor. Well, that happened and he hit the deck. So imagine what's going through your head. I don't believe it. I've been running less than 50 metres and I'm on the ground. Took a tumble, but did get up and obviously managed to relax enough to get into your running. And of course, one of the benefits of marathon running is it's not over, right? You still got 26.1 miles to cover. And of course he did. He did recover and went on to run the second fastest time in the race's 129-year history. Fantastic. And what about the women's? Before we do, we've got one amazing American result to mention quickly, haven't we? Yes, Connor Mance running 2:05.08. What a brilliant run for him. These runners come in saying they're fit and ready at the press conferences, and you just kind of nod your head like, yeah, I've heard that before. But Connor Mance is just a grinder. 2:05.08. What a stunning performance for the American. And of course, we'll both remember when Ryan Hall snuck just under 2:05. I think he ran 2:04.58. Was it 2011? I want to say that, but I'm not entirely sure. This amazing time and the fastest ever American. And of course, Connor Mance just missing out on that. But interestingly, Ryan Hall said to him just before the race, well, it's not a 2:04:58 day with my shoes on, but with yours it is. Ha, brilliant. Right, and what about the women's race, Deena?
The women's race was also an exciting one. All the runners taking advantage of a great day. And I think when you sign up for Boston, you just really pray for that slight tailwind to help you to the finish as opposed to a headwind. And the race was won by none other than Sharon Lokedi. She ran 2:17:22, shattering the course record, taking 2 minutes 37 seconds off of the previous best by Buzanesh Diba of Ethiopia back in 2014. So neck and neck, she was with Helen Obiri, who was trying to go for her three-peat, but she was able to beat Helen Obiri by 19 seconds. So just really powering through Boylston to get to that finish line. During the race, the leaders ran a 4:48 downhill mile. That was at mile 16. It looked like Lokedi lost contact and when that happens in a race, you'd think it takes a lot of energy to catch back up, but she was able to regain contact with the pack a couple miles later. Her final mile was 5:04. So just strong running and really smart running, right? Running within yourself to let that pack go as they're trying to break away might have seemed a little reckless in her mind to take advantage of that downhill, because those downhills can also beat your legs up. So really smart running, I think, by Sharon Lokedi.
Yeah, great. 2:72, 2:17 times. Sharon Lokedi and Helen Obiri in Boston, and a 2:18 for the top three spots. So very fast running. Great 2:22:38 from Callie Thackeray as well, who was a top British performer in sixth place. In the wheelchair division, Susanna Scaroni won her second Boston. She beat Catherine De Bruyne by more than 2 minutes. Of course, we had previously said that De Bruyne was going to go for a record, but she was done by Susanna Scaroni. And in the men's, Marcel Hug won his 8th Boston. Well, 8th, finishing nearly 4.5 minutes clear of Daniel Romanchek.
Great racing all around in Boston. We also have some fun 6-star updates for you.
Yeah, it was a glorious day. There were 1,594 6-star finishers, 29 of them completing their journey for repeat time. But somebody who was completing that Abbott World Marathon Majors 6-star journey for the very first time, and in doing so, claiming her 6-star medal and winning the female age 50 to 54 age group time in 2:53:44 was none other than Paula Radcliffe. There she goes, picking up a medal. Fantastic. As we said at the start, we exited Boston and we bumped straight into the TCS London Marathon this coming weekend. And what a lineup it is. As we go through the show, you will listen to Spencer Barden. Now, we did record this with Spencer slightly before some news items, so we'll give you a little bit of catch up on those news items. Now, on the men's side, we have defending champion Alexander Matiso in the field, Olympic champion Tamarit Tola, Sebastian Soro, who ran their fastest ever debut in Valencia in 2022, the winner of Berlin, the winner of New York, and Jacob Kiplimo will be making his much anticipated debut. And let's not forget, none other than the GOAT. Eliud Kipchoge will also be returning to London. Somebody who won't be there, though, is Kenenisa Bekele, who as of today has announced that he has withdrawn. And that was something, Deena, that I was actually looking forward to. I was looking forward to seeing the old guard race the new guard, the newcomers, the sort of the Bekele and Kipchoge, looking to see how would they do against Matiso, how would they do against Kiplimo, and how would those youngsters tackle the wisdom of age. Now, just down to Kipchoge to try and break the younger men in the field.
Right. And I think that London is such a great equalizer amongst all of them, because it's not only a fast course, it is so competitive. It's part of Spencer's job. In your interview with him, he talks about the nuances of bringing a big field together. I think they probably have one of the biggest budgets on the Abbott World Marathon Major circuit to get just the best of the best to go head to head. So it is kind of like an Olympic feeling in London every year because of the depth that Spencer and his team bring in. And it would have been fun. Eliud Kipchoge's hot off the heels of his retirement, rejoining the sport. So it really lends me to believe, did he miss the spotlight, or did he just like keep training? And he's like, actually, I'm in really good shape. Why would I stop this? So it'd be fun. Maybe if you get a chance to ask him that question yourself when you're in London, Martin, maybe you can get to the bottom of that.
I will do. I will do. Looking forward to those races. What about the women's fields?
Yeah, the women's field is star-studded as well. Towing the line in London on the women's side will be Olympic gold medalist Sifan Hassan, former world record holder Tigist Assefa, and 2021 winner of the London Marathon Jocelyn Jepkosgei. Fantastic fields. 4 women in the field own marathon personal best under 2 hours, 17 minutes. It's going to be a phenomenal race, but without world record holder Ruth Chepngetich and defending champion Paris Dipchurcher, who withdrew earlier this week. So I think you spoke to Spencer about that. It's not just about putting this big field together.
It's such an amazing field, right? And disappointing news, of course, because that field in particular in London, including world record holder and defending champion in the same field. You know, if you continue to listen to the show, you will hear Spencer talk about what his priorities for racing are. And without doubt, the thing he said was to get the existing world record holder and the defending champion in the same race. So, of course, he spent this time nurturing, building and getting the defending champion and the world record holder in the same race. And then with just days to go, both withdraw from the race. Of course, when you've got a field of that quality, Spencer says in the interview, you know, the challenge is not to perhaps get them to sign on for the race, but it's to support them getting to the race. You know, the hardest thing is, of course, like it is for all us marathon runners, getting to the start line. And so it shows that, you know, even the world's best don't always get it right and sometimes don't make the start line.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing as you made it more general. Like, can't we all relate to this, that you have this goal and maybe it's to run a personal best, maybe it's to beat the world record holder, but you're pushing the limits in your training a little bit more, but life doesn't go on hold because you still have a job and you still got to take care of the kids and you get these little niggles and, you know, you try to be smart and get therapy and cross train and do all these things, but with a week to go, maybe you just have to make that hard decision to just not toe that starting line, because for all of us, health and safety should be our number one priority in this. And so if you're battling an injury, make that be a call to you that your body is out of balance. And so do what it's going to take to maintain the health, because we want you in this sport forever, not just for your next race.
Here's a quick question for you, Deena. How old do you think the oldest and youngest participants are for this year's TCS London Marathon?
19 is the youngest and 87 is the oldest.
Well, you're close, but you're not exactly right, I'm afraid. The youngest participant is Lucy Jones, who turns 18 on Marathon Day.
That's amazing. Happy birthday, Lucy.
And the oldest participant is 84-year-old Mohan Kuchatka, who is 84, and 83-year-old Mary Jo Brinkman. They're both travelling over from the USA to race in this year's TCS London Marathon.
They found their fountain of youth, and it is the marathon itself.
On this episode of Marathon Talk, I'm delighted to be joined by Spencer Barden. Spencer is the head of elite athletes at London Marathon events. He's got a very important role. He's responsible for assembling the world-class elite fields for the best marathon in the world, including London Marathon, but also other events like the Big Half, the Vitality London 10,000. Before joining London Marathon events, Spencer worked with British Athletics. He held various roles there over 12 years. He was a consultant head of athlete recruitment, where he orchestrated elite participation for some of the major televised meets, such as London Anniversary Games and the Diamond League and the Indoor Grand Prix in Birmingham and Glasgow. He also played a significant role in the Ineos 159 Challenge, serving as the head of pacemakers, no pressure there, for Eliud Kipchoge's historic sub-2-hour marathon attempt. He's a former international athlete, represented Great Britain and Northern Ireland and England in track, road and cross country, and certainly handed it to me several times. He earned over 30 representative caps, so he's got first-hand experience as a competitor, and that really should enrich his perspective in athlete recruitment. London Marathon events continues to attract the top tier of global talent. We're going to hear more about the 2025 race shortly, reinforcing London Marathon's reputation for hosting some of the most competitive and celebrated races globally. Welcome to Marathon Talk, Spencer.
Thanks, Martin. Good to be here, and great to chat about this year's elite fields at London Marathon. And as you mentioned, there's some of the work that I've done in the past, and actually, one of the projects was actually that Ineos 159, which was obviously fantastic working with Eliud, and obviously is in this year's race. And I still work for it's now Athletic Ventures doing the London Diamond League, so I'm still involved because now we have obviously UK Athletics, London Marathon, and Great Run working together, and part of that joint venture agreement is to deliver the Diamond League. So I'm still working for London Diamond League through Athletic Ventures, so we're still very much involved in the track side of the sport, as well as now road running as well.
And look, I hope you don't mind me saying, but we're no longer youth in the game. You've been around athletics and running for many years now, especially at the pointy end, the very sharp end. What is it that still keeps you going? What still motivates you about the sport?
I think I've always enjoyed the sport from competing from a very young age. I got involved in the sport when I was 10, 11 years of age, and I just really enjoyed it. It's something that I was pretty good at, and I always sort of as a family, we always like to be involved in sports. All sport, football. I played football at a young age as well, and like most kids, you got involved in many sports. So. And I just always had just a love for athletics, and I still run today. Obviously, not nowhere near the amount of running I used to do, but still I like to get out and go running, 3 or 4 times a week, and I just get such a buzz from the excitement of putting the fields together. And actually, when you start to announce fields, it's because you've been part of that. And it's almost the expectation of what people are looking for in the London Marathon, and it's great to be going through that process. And it's a joy to get up in the morning, and every day is slightly different. You never know what's going to happen. Good news, bad news along the way, but no, it's great fun. It's a great sport to be involved in, and it's a privilege to be involved in. Putting elite fields together for events like the London Marathon.
And although we're talking about huge global marathon events, effectively it's a relatively small family of people that kind of come together. You see people across world marathon majors, the same people that you see. Often they're around for quite a long time. So it's quite a close knit global running community. Now, you've already mentioned the 2025 TCS London Marathon, and every year, I seem to look at those fields and go, wow, That is incredible. Another year of incredible fields. But this year, the 45th edition, you seem to have really pulled together something special. It's quite incredible. Those already confirmed, all 4 Olympic and Paralympic champions, Sifan Hassan, Tamrit Tola, Catherine De Bruyne, Marcel Hoog, both defending champions, Alex Matiso and Perez Chepchurch here. These are incredible elite races that you're building. So how early do you have to start thinking about what a field looks like for an event like the event we've got coming up in a couple of weeks?
It starts really early, to be honest. It's pretty much a 12-month process. It starts pretty much the day after the race of the previous year. So I do remember last year I was on Monday coming home from last year's marathon and sitting at the airport just waiting to get a flight back up to Scotland, and Hugh Brayshaw, who's obviously the CEO of London Marathon Events, calls me and he goes, right, what are you thinking for next year's field? So it's so it already sort of starts. So
Classic.
yeah, absolutely. But look, the first priority is always you want your defending champions back. So that's an early conversation that happens pretty much the day after the race, when we've still got the champions in London doing some press and media. Yeah, their managers are there, and I'm already talking to them about we'd be delighted to have your athlete back next year to defend their title in London. Let's talk over the next few weeks, and please don't talk to other marathons before you speak to me. And that's sort of how the process really starts. And obviously you're always looking ahead when you're looking at a marathon, looking what could be an exciting story for next year's race. And it's you always have in your mind what you think the race could look like, and who you'd like to invite. But of course that doesn't always work out this way. Fortunately for this year's for this race, the 45th race, we've got the greatest field in both the men's and the women's side, and everything seems to sort of fall into place. And it's doesn't always happen that way, because obviously there's other choices of marathons for certainly world marathon majors where athletes can go, certainly in the spring. So you are in many ways in competition with those marathons. But I think for me it's always been one of the most important things that I've found over the years, been involved in putting fields together for the last 15 plus years now, on track and road. It's the relationships and contacts you have with the athlete representatives, the managers, the agents. You have to build that up over many, many years, and you have to have good working relationships, and obviously, the good contacts are there as well, and you have to build that over time, and that's so important, I think, from my side, in terms of putting great fields together. Having that good working relationship with those managers, because you want them to be speaking to you before they speak to anybody else in many ways.
Anybody else, yeah. So you're doing the negotiations early, and you're building that, professional rapport with those agents and managers. And I think one of the highlights, there's a couple of things about this year's race. For me, I'm really excited about the women's field you've been able to put together. It's going to be the first women's marathon in history, I think, where 3 of the starters have got sub 2:14 PBs. Ruth Chepengetich, 2:09.56, Sifan Hassan, 2:13.44, and Tigist Essifer. All of them run sub 2:14, 2:11.53 she's run. So, when you put together, they're kind of mouth-watering, isn't it? You think to yourself, okay, this could really go. Women's elite global marathon running in the last 18 months has gone supersonic.
Yeah.
It really has. And, how do you pull that kind of field together? And then what are your hopes for what the outcome of that's going to look like in London this year?
I think when you look at that women's field, when we set out, I think it's, we have a women's only race, as in London. So it's about a women's only world record. And obviously Perez Chepchirchir got that last year with a 2:16.16 in winning. And looking at that field, and when you start to put that field together, you absolutely know that there's 4 or 5 athletes that can all run well inside 2:16, 16, even in a women's only race. Um, so this year it's very much built around. Yeah, of course, we want all those big head-to-heads because people want to see Ruth Chepngetich v Olympic champion Sifan Hassan, and you chuck in there Tigist Sifa and Periship Chirchir, last year's champion, and others. It makes it for a very exciting race, and obviously you just keeping your fingers crossed as the weeks and months go by that all those athletes are progressing well, and obviously come to London in firstly in great shape, but also make the start line in London. That's always a big challenge. Put these fields together, and it's the fields holding together, which is probably the biggest challenge in the weeks and months leading up to the race. So, but I think it's I think this year's field, it's and it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see how the race goes, because obviously I've been talking to a lot of the managers over the last few weeks about what we're looking at in terms of pace for the race, and it's very much targeted towards a world record. It's and that's the sort of pace that the race will go, weather conditions permitting and everything else.
And I thought sort of have this. You're absolutely right that holding that together, particularly now, we're speaking just a few weeks before the start of this race. So I imagine, it's critical time for athletes, managers, and elite athlete coordinators in the field like you, because there's a lot of work that you've spent many months nurturing, all coming together to try and produce something special within a couple of hours on a given day. That's a big ask. To coordinate all of those things. I've got this vision that, as the days draw closer, there's kind of this secret little room and everybody gets together in it, and you think, right, okay, come on, what's the form like? What's the, and then you talk about the pacemakers. Now, how does the specifics, because we'll sit back and we'll watch it on TV or we'll spectate on the course. How does the specifics of going, okay, this is what we'd like to happen against, this is a race, right? And the athletes can effectively go out there, and if they want, start as fast or as slow as they like. There's a little dynamic there. How does that really work in practice?
Yeah, certainly over the last, first thing about obviously getting the athletes on the line, over the last number of weeks, I have weekly calls with the managers of the key athletes. How things going, everything in place. Even things like have the athletes got their visas now, that sort of stuff. Just little things that people forget about, but would need to happen. And then obviously, is training going well? Any little issues or anything at all? So I have those regular weekly calls with the managers just to keep a check on things, and then. Certainly in the last week or two, we've gone into a bit more detail about what sort of pace, what are we looking at? What's Ruth looking at? Is she looking to go out hard? Is she looking to it's going to be a competitive race, so not go too crazy fast in the first half? What's Sifan? And of course, they're all keeping things a little bit close to the chest. They're almost in a way. Wanting me to direct the pace, which in the end of the day I have to do, right? So I have to set the pace and agree the pace with the pacemakers, but at the same time, there's quite a few conversations that happen in the weeks before.
And it's still a race,
absolutely.
You can't take away the essence of racing. Yeah,
absolutely. And
I'm intrigued this year.
Yeah,
go on. Sorry.
So I just say it's if you look at it and the pace they're going to go, if we're going to go world record pace, and it's 2:16, 16. So let's assume we're going to go, 2:15, 2:14 pace. You're looking at 67 and a half through halfway. There's not many female athletes in the world that can run that fast for a half marathon, right? So, with the best will in the world, the athletes are contracted to halfway, the pacer athletes. So I expect to have the pacer athletes, certainly in the leading group, they're pretty much to a halfway. If they can get to 25k, great. If they can get to 30k, even better, but that's a tall order. So pretty much, I think when you get to halfway, 25k, that's when the race really starts. And that's when athletes will know, they know how they're feeling, they know if they want to start pushing the pace on or if they need to sort of hang on to the group. So Yeah, but we will, we will set the pace, and the general agreed pace certainly through halfway. Then after that, yeah, it's pretty much does become the race. And ultimately, what we would like is, men's and women's races to have a group of 5, 6 athletes going along embankment and turning around and coming down the mile and really racing it out like we've had in previous years. We had last year, obviously the year when in 23 when Sifan last raced, and obviously she had to stop and do a stretching and everything else on the way, but managed to haul herself back and win with a sprint finish.
And that's what doesn't that make exciting racing?
Absolutely,
there's uncertainty. You don't want to race, although part of your role is to give some sort of control and predictability. You don't want that, right? You actually want a race which is going to really push and excite and stretch and be fascinating for the runners, but also for people watching. And now in this year's men's race, it's almost a race of two types of athlete, right? I'm interested in, when you're putting that field together, how you balance established champions and world record holders, Kipchoge, Bekele in the field, with newcomers, and this year, of course, I think, we've got Jacob Kiplimo, the Ugandan, in the field, reigning world cross country champion, Olympic and world championship medals over 10,000 meters, Commonwealth game champion, and Sebastian Sore, the Kenyan, who ran the 5th fastest time in history when he won in Valencia last year, 2:02 on his debut. So you've got established contenders with a track record of winning big events, with uncertainty, but without a doubt, incredible potential and emerging talent. How do you balance those things together?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, and to be honest, some of these conversations with these athletes happened 2 years ago. So Jacob Kiplimo is the example. So I knew that he was looking at some point to make his debut in London, and 2+ years ago, I had that conversation with his manager, and I said, well, if when he debuts, it must be in London, and we agreed it on a handshake. So absolutely, it will be in London. So, and when it got to that point, when he was ready to make that transition from the track, and obviously around the road, he was obviously half marathon world record holder, lost it and got it back again a couple of weeks ago, and. So yeah, he was somebody that I always thought, and when I talk about looking ahead, he's somebody that I always thought would be the one that could transition really well from the track, the road, the half, and then obviously to the marathon. So then obviously you've got Sebastian Sawyer is another one I was interested in, and I had some conversations early in the year with his management team, and he wasn't confirmed until after Valencia. So it wasn't till mid late December, but we'd already agreed that yes, we'd keep it open. He was somebody that I was really interested in London, and depending on how things went in Valencia, then we would make an offer for him for London. So sometimes it's a bit of a waiting game. Some things are done much earlier, as we said, off the back of last year's race, and other things are sort of pieced together as the season and as the months go on. And then obviously you've got the established stars like obviously Eliud, and we always were keen to get Eliud back in London. Last time he raced was 2020 when he had that not so good day under the COVID conditions, where we had the race, obviously the multi-lap race around St James's Park. And it wasn't a good day for him, and I'd always said to him and his team that you can't leave that as London. You've got to come back and at least try and win number 5. So it was always the plan. It didn't quite work out last year. We were keen to have him there last year, but obviously it worked out with the planning for him to come back in 25. And I think very much I see this is probably his certainly his last year in London, and this may be his last year of competitive marathons. Obviously he's at the end of his career.
But he brings, people like those established names bring such excitement and potential excitement to a race. Yet, as we see so often in London, you can have a surprise, and it's a surprise that can really make headlines and grab people's attention and pique public interest, and media interest, but also just make the race exciting. So this year's London, of course, I'm not going to ask you to predict a finish, I'd kind of like to, but tell us something that you would really like to see happen with your inside knowledge of those races. And yeah, I hear you on the fastest, women's marathon. In terms of the racing, what would you really like to see happen in both men's and women's races?
I think it's a really good question. I think if I just went back to last year, I remember sort of the internal team asking me beforehand what would be great today. I said, look, it'd be great to have a British guy on the podium, which was Emil Caress, and it'd be great to get a women's only world record. And that happened. Believe it, it wasn't going to happen at some point, but it happened. And I think if I look at the 2025 race, I think for me, I'd like to see the men's race, a really competitive race with 5 or 6 athletes, fighting it out as we come into the final, 3 or 4 kilometers. And I'd like to see Eliud in that group, and I'd like to see Ken Anissa in that group. I'd like to see the old guards with the new guards, so I'd that's what I'd like to see. Be great if that could happen, and it would be so exciting, especially for TV. Really doesn't matter too much about the time. Look, we're not going to run sub 2 hours in London. It's not. We're not looking at that. I know, obviously, Kiplimo's run extremely quick on the half, but we're not talking about running a sub 2 hours. But we have, I expect us to be somewhere around 2:1, 2:2 in the men's race, somewhere around that sort of time. Women's race, I'd love to see, Ruth and Sifan, fighting it out,
Duking it.
Yeah, really. And I think, Ruth will probably, she'll know how dangerous Sifan is in the final stages with her, she's got that track background and speed. So I think she'll probably try and push hard, certainly in the second half of the race to break Sifan. But it wouldn't be an intriguing race to see, maybe Sifan, if Ruth is away, closing in the final stages. So I'd like to see a real battle there. That's what you want. You want the excitement all the way, right down to the last, few hundred meters, last kilometer. I think that's great.
Do you still get that little feeling? So, do you still get that feeling that you had as an elite athlete when you're seeing, along the embankment, you're seeing the men, and you've pieced this jigsaw of competition together, and let's say those races go well, and we do see, we see the top 4 women in the field, or perhaps 3 of them, and one ringer. They're all drilling it, absolutely drilling it down the embankment, and they're doing a right hand turn, and there's a podium for 3, and there's 4 of them, and they're all running 2:14 and bits. Do you still get that tingly sensation?
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's because as an event, the team is a big team obviously around London Marathon, in terms of making sure everything comes together on the day. I'm a small part of that because obviously in what I do, but of course it's just great for the event, and to see people getting excited, not just the general public, but even people who are very close to the sport, or the managers and their support teams, and all the sort of the London Marathon staff, all getting excited about this is happening in the final stages. And of course, that's what you want, that you set out to have, something like that in terms of the race for the men's and women's side. You want a competitive race, you want an exciting race, really sort of get you going. You just want to get the first half of the race almost out of the way, because
safely done.
Safely done, because everyone picking up their drinks as they should do, and everything else, no little incidents, and and then that's really when when after halfway, that's really when the racing is going to start, and you hope it's going to be exciting, and people are going to enjoy. You want people tuning in on the BBC, tuning in to watch it. People lining the streets of London as they do, to come out and watch exciting races. Of course, we know it's just not about the elites. It's just a small part of the London Marathon, but it makes it for exciting watching at the front end of the field.
Yeah, it's going to be a brilliant event. Congratulations on everything that you do in bringing those fields together to generate such anticipation, and excitement for what this year is going to be, I'm sure, phenomenal racing. Listen, Spencer, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck for everything. Best of luck for everything in this year's TCS London Marathon. It's time for the community notes section of our show. And in our last episode, we asked our listeners who are running in Boston to predict their finish time. We said we'd give a prize to the person who finished as close to their prediction as possible. Well, Statman Stu has been working overtime. He has been sizzling in Boston, and he sent us the details for the winner of that competition.
Ding, 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 ding. Congratulations to Janet Boats, who was aiming to run 3:35:10. She finished in a time of 3:35:45, just 35 seconds off of her predicted time. What a machine. We will be in touch this week to arrange your prize delivery, Janet. Congratulations.
Here's the thing, Deena. Have you ever run exactly a time you set out to run? So we talk about times quite a lot, don't we? And we go, yeah, I'm going to try and do this, this and this. Have you ever nailed it? Like, I have got that bang on the money.
No, not as close as Janet has. Have you?
No. I once tried to break 66 minutes for a half marathon, and I ran 66:05. So I was like, missed it by like 6 seconds. So I wasn't quick enough.
So maybe Janet should send her prize to you, since you are better at predicting. Should we encourage
what we've decided to do? Yeah, I've never got it right either, because of course when you do better than, you forget what you set yourself, don't you? You think, well, I beat that by X, so you don't remember what you set yourself. And when you do worse than, you just feel miserable and don't bother to talk about it ever again. Anyway, we thought we'd run this competition again. For London. From the various Marathon Talk social channels, here are the 10 TCS London Marathon finish time forecasts. A couple of Instagram. Rachel Cowden's aiming for 4:57:28.
Former guest on the show, Mark Rogerson, is on the hunt for his second 6-star medal. He's aiming to cross the finish line on the Mall in 4:12. Wow, good job, Mark. Caroline will be running this weekend for breast cancer. Thank you for using the sport to raise awareness and funds. She's aiming for a similar time to Mark. 4:15 is her target.
And Mark Gammon has a weather-adjusted target time of 4:28:30. Hopefully a bit quicker, he says. That's not really the point for the game, Mark. But anyway, good luck. And Melissa Fluke has a target of 3:15 that she is determined to hit. And that's it. Best of luck to everyone taking part in Sunday's race, and we'll announce our winners on the next show.
That is it from us in this busy episode of Marathon Talk. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Enjoyed the show? Writing a 5-star review would help others find us, so please do.
You can follow us on @Marathon Talk. Stay connected with all things Marathon Talk by following us there. Just search Marathon Talk on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, join our Strava Club. Look up Marathon Talk in the clubs section, where we've got some exciting content, challenges, and more on the way.
That's a wrap for us for another week. Thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone I met in Boston who came out and let me know that they enjoyed the show. We love to hear that. So, Martin, I hope you enjoy London. What an exciting week you have ahead.
Thanks, Deena. So tell me one thing someone said.
Well, I had someone come up and say that they're an original listener to Marathon Talk and that they loved the show. I had another person say that this is where they get their marathon information about the professionals and also some training tips. Other people that said that they loved our New York, that they've listened to our New York show on a couple of occasions because they loved that episode so much of the two of us running the TCS New York City Marathon. So just some fun conversations. Some of them at the expo, some of them on the streets as I had my favorite cup of coffee in my hand, but all really great feedback from our listeners. So thanks.
Well, if you are going to the TCS London Marathon running show, I'll be there tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday. So, in fact, you'd have already been there. If you're listening to this on Friday and you're coming to the running show on Saturday, please make sure you say a big hello. I'll be doing some talks on centre stage. And then on Sunday, on race day itself, I'm hosting the London Marathon Media Centre, which is right on the finish line. So that's going to be fun with all the world's global media excited about the race and the interviews. Like what happens is at the end, the finishers, the elite finishers, walk through and get the chance to speak to the journalists that are in the media centre at the end of the day, at the end of the race. So it's always a fun place to be. So I'm hoping for some great race stories. Well, I think that's it. Until then, enjoy the run wherever it takes you.